And beets. Beets go into the ground. It's quite often easier to grow beets in the fall than in the spring, because they tend to not get enough water in the summer, and then they'll go hard and woody. Whereas if you plant them midsummer into the fall, they'll give you a really, really good crop. So that's just an idea. But, you know, I spring plant and I fall plant, but I find... Okay, so we're looking at heat and light. Germination heat is somewhere actually really between 21 and 30 degrees for most seeds. So you're going to have a pretty hot house to get a full germination. You can still get a germination at 15 to 17 degrees, but you're not going to get as good a germination for seed unless these temperatures are fairly high. And you need, once they've actually germinated, drop your temperature in your room or move them away so that it's about 15 to 21 degrees by day. You can drop it to 15 degrees at night quite easily. Light, when you've germinated, daylight or fluorescent light. Now, incandescent light, ordinary light, has only red rays in it. Your ordinary screw-type bulbs, unless they're fluorescent, or your ordinary old Edison light bulb, they are not good for plants, because they will make your plants go straight up, but they won't make them go nice and bushy and solid. So you need to use a fluorescent light. People will try and sell you what are called grow lights. The professionals use them. But I used one yellowish light tube, fluorescent, and I used one light one, a cool white. And that is, according to the pundits, that is the best mix that you can use. So using an ordinary daylight tube, you can buy the grow light tubes. They're not that expensive, but they're not absolutely necessary. Daylight is good. If you put your plants onto the windowsill in pure daylight, they will stretch towards the sun. And you'll have to turn them a quarter turn each day, and they'll tend to stay more upright. If you can, if you've got the space to if you've got a sill that's about that deep, it's fine. And take them, if it's going to be a really cold night, like a couple of the nights that we've had sort of on and off over this winter, if it's going to be really cold, some of your really small seedlings can get frostburn through the glass. Even though you've got 2 or 3 layers of glass, they can get frostburn. So take them off the windowsill at night if it's going to be really, really cold. I think we're pretty well past that this year, so we're in luck, hopefully. Okay, so here we have a picture. And what's wrong with that picture?
Because the windows.
Yep, and the window's wide open, so you're going to get a nasty little cold breeze, and they're going to get frostburnt, and they're going to go... This is fine for small herbs in summer. Don't get me wrong. Windowsills are wonderful for summer. They're wonderful for starting certain plants. But you've got a cold wind coming through that open window. You've got small pots. They dry out too quickly. And you're cramping your roots as well. You need the biggest pot you can find. And so we have a little bit of a problem. Okay, so just be careful to allow enough space for the better the root system of your seedling, when you're going to transplant it out, the better it will grow in the garden. So you've got to get as big a pot as you can find, or you can buy. Okay, so how are we doing time-wise? Whew, yeah. Okay, not just dirty dirt for soil mixes. It's best to start in a soil-less mix. Don't go out in the garden and just dig out some soil out of the garden and plonk it in a pot and think you're going to grow. There are a lot of pathogens. I'm sounding like the medical lot here. But there are lots of little fungi and things like that growing in the soil that you won't be able to see, but they will attack your seeds. So do, for goodness sake, buy or mix your own decent mix. So you're going to use peat or sphagnum, which is the moss that's compressed in these little pellets. And you're going to use vermiculite, which is a form of expanded mica. Mica is also known as fool's gold. If you ever go up into the hills around Stanley or out where I live, up Cambridge Narrows way, if you go into some of the streams there and you start panning for gold, because there is actually gold around here, you will get some very flaky stuff that looks like little tiny shards of gold. You're not very likely to find an awful lot of gold. You'll find mica, because mica and gold go together. But mica is a little flaky thing, and it sort of trickles down the streams and catches your eye, and you think, oh, gold! It's mica. Perlite is volcanic ash that has been expanded and made into very useful. Now, both of these products are actually inert. They come in these size bags. They're very useful. Useful bag. I'm going to pass these around so you can look at the back of them. This stuff is brilliant for African violets. So anybody wants to get some African violets going, that stuff. And you'll find that most of the seed mixes, like this one, which is on-ring certified, which means it's organic and it's actually certified. Sorry, poor Travis is having a hard time. The more of these things, the vermiculite, which is a sort of grey, silvery colour, perlite is almost pure white, as you'll see on the bag. The more you see of those in these mixes, the better they are. Because the actual mix ratio is 4 parts peat, sphagnum, or compost to 2 parts, if you want to make your own, to 2 parts of perlite and 2 parts of vermiculite. It works out quite expensive, don't get me wrong, but then if you're using peat, use a little bit of lime as well, because peat is so acid that it will actually burn the roots of some very small plants. So that's why I've put lime there. I might have given the impression last year that I don't really advocate the use of lime. Lime has its uses, but don't overuse it. It's one of those things that's slightly dangerous. It's like boron, which is a trace element. If you put too much on, you'll kill a lot of plants. So lime, because we have very acidic soils here in New Brunswick, we do need lime, except for things like your heathers, your lings, your ericas, your azaleas, rhododendrons, blueberries. Don't put lime anywhere near them, otherwise they won't grow. Okay, so what exactly are these things? Okay, peat. We have the biggest peat beds in the world in northern New Brunswick. We supply 40% of the world's peat. And if I was giving this talk in England, I wouldn't be mentioning peat because it's a dirty word there, because they say it's not a sustainable product. Well, it is, but it takes an awful long time to break down. It is very good for water retention, so you don't have to water often. It allows space for root development, because if you feel that bag, it's not particularly heavy. You know, as against soil, which is really pretty heavy, conventional. Peat moss, however, is very acid. That is why these little pellets are made of sphagnum moss, which is the one that you line your baskets with. It's the green moss that you can buy in packets, and you line the baskets with it. That's basically, and it comes out of our forests, so it comes straight out. So, yeah, it's better to use that rather than peat moss at this stage. Vermiculite is the mineral, which is, it's a twofer in fact. It improves soil aeration. Now, what you're trying to do in starting plants is to get them to really grow a good root system. And that's why you need aeration. You're trying to give them the space to spread out. It doesn't deteriorate, it doesn't get moldy, and it doesn't rot. And it's neutral at a level of 7 pH, which is absolutely dead in the middle. It's not acid, it's not alkaline. It's sterile, it's non-toxic, but watch out if you're mixing stuff, you get quite a lot of dust coming up, and it gets in your throat, and it can get quite nasty. It's odorless, and it's permanent. And perlite, which is the expanded rock, is whiter than vermiculite, so you'll see the two together. It's good for root development. It actually creates root development. It's used for taking cuttings. So if you want to take cuttings in midsummer of things like lavender or I've got some cuttings actually at the moment of a pink cherry tree. I've got them in perlite. And you quite often put it at the bottom of containers so that it can let the water go out of the bottom of the container freely. If you're doing potted containers with flowers on them on your front deck, that's what you would put at the bottom. And it's also used for dry storage. So if you're going to store things like carrots, parsnips, and other root vegetables, beetroot, over the winter, use perlite, or you can use just straight peat moss. Except, again, I had some old polystyrene, you know, those carriers that you carry your, you can buy them cheaply, they're about $2 each with a lid. But I didn't notice that one had a crack. So I put some carrots in there, in peat, for the winter, to start saving everything for the winter. And I thought, well, I'd better have a look at them because I wasn't sure. There was one carrot that was a bit iffy. And I hadn't seen the crack. Open up the lid, and there's a whole lot of carrots growing in mid-November. So be careful what you put them in. Right. Compost is an organic mix. Now, compost, if you're going to start growing any seeds in compost, you're going to have to sterilize it first. Because again, it's got all sorts of little microscopic stuff in it that if you've made your own compost, it's fine, but you have to sterilize it, which means that you've got to heat that to about 300 degrees in your oven. And believe me, you're not going to like the smell. It stinks. So if you've got somewhere where you can do it outside, that's fine. If you've got a barbecue with a great big old tin can that you can do it on, that's fine, but don't try doing it inside, it stinks. All right, so your natural trace elements, there are 60 trace elements that plants use. But we'll talk about more of those in another session. But the main ones that we need for growing seedlings are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Because nitrogen will give you good leaf growth, phosphorus will give you good root growth, and your potassium, which comes later, which is the K in NPK, and you'll look if you look on the back of that organic mix box bag, you'll probably find that they've got an NPK rating on it. That's the one that will help the plant actually set seed later on, well, flower and then set seed if you're growing something that's seedable, in other words, like beans and peas and things like that. Okay, but don't give your seedlings inside anything that's got a high nitrogen number. So if you're giving 10, 7, 7, don't use that, because that's going to be too much nitrogen and they're going to go leggy and they're going to go leafy, but they're going to go up rather than getting sturdy and solid and with a good root. So you're really looking for a high middle number if you're going to use any form of soluble fertilizers. So you're looking for a 10, 15, 10, or even a 1, 5, 1, something like that. Okay, we'll get back to those in a minute. So, and compost is generally less acid than your normal sort of soils or whatever. So, pots. These are some of the sort of professional pots. These are actually tree seedlings. This one this side is actually tree seedlings. That is a form of styrofoam that they're using. Those top ones are lettuces in, they're in black plastic pots. So then you've got your normal ceramic pot, the one on the windowsill, and then you've got a bell jar. I'll explain in a minute, but you don't have to spend a lot of money on pots.